Hello, and welcome to the Commode Code, your comprehensive guide to restroom etiquette in the 21st century. I'm your host, Justin, and I'm joined by my co-host, Peter.
Hey there, everybody.
So, since we're just starting this out, I wanted to share a bit of the origin story. Peter told me a few years ago that he had been planning to write a book about restroom etiquette in the workplace. Where did this idea come from, Peter?
Well, Justin, I used to work at a high-tech company here in the Northwest, and part of the required HR was watching the Standards of Business Conduct video. This video had a lot to do with situations at the workplace and how one should respond in the correct manner. But during my day-to-day, I would see a lot of flagrant violations in the restroom. And I really wish we had a Standards of Bathroom Conduct video. From that, I thought, wow, there's a lot of stuff here that could go into a book that a lot of people would benefit from.
Yeah, and then you had too many kids to actually write a book.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I figured I'd just nail Peter down for an hour or two every couple of weeks, and we could record this and answer any burning questions that any of our listeners have about their restroom conduct.
That's a great idea. I think we could help a lot of people with this.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd like to cover this week is appropriate footwear. When is okay to use a restroom barefoot?
Wow. We've jumped right into the fire on this one.
Yeah.
So let's just be very clear here. If you're in the workplace and you've wandered into the restroom and you're barefoot, you really need to take a hard look in the mirror. That is not an okay situation.
All right, so let's talk about other alternative footwear. What about flip-flops, sandals?
Hey, it is summer. It's warm out there. You want to look cool. All the kids are wearing the flip-flops, but there's a thing that happens, especially in the men's room. I'm not going to speak for the ladies on this one, but if you're standing at the urinal and you're next to somebody, there is a splash factor.
Yeah, I think there can be. Now, something that's interesting to me is when you're at the beach or at a pool, flip-flops are basically your only option for easily getting in and out. Do you think that you have to do like a rinse afterwards? You have to go back to the shower, back into the pool. Is it gross if you go back into the pool without rinsing at the shower?
No. I think going into the pool is a completely adequate rinse in that circumstance. And going to the shower might be a little overboard. I mean, obviously your stall selection or urinal selection is critical when you're wearing flops or minimal coverage footwear. It's just anything you can do to avoid that splash factor.
Right. Something that's interesting to me is what about Crocs, where you're not fully open, but you're a partially open shoe? I guess that follows the same open toe type of situation.
It does, but it also falls into a completely different category of fashion sense and why one would be wearing Crocs. So we could get into that on another episode.
Well, what if that's in the workplace? Is it okay to wear Crocs in the workplace? Does it matter what workplace?
Absolutely, it does. So I believe, I don't know if it's still current, but in the healthcare industry, people are on their feet a lot. We're wearing Crocs, comfortable, easily cleanable, that kind of shoe. Now, however, if you're just high tech, sitting at a desk doing computer work all day, I'm going to question the Croc choice.
Not so much. What about, here's an interesting one. What about toe shoes? What about your Vibram Fivefingers and such? Does that fall into a separate category, or is that?
The Fivefinger shoes were quite the thing, quite popular for about 2 months. I would say that they do provide solid coverage, though, and they're easily washable. So I would say it's a valid choice if that's your thing.
All right, so that's okay. The one last one that I saw is probably, to me, the most disgusting, is probably worse even than going in barefoot, is socks. People who take their shoes off, this is, common at like a desk job again.
Sure.
Take your shoes off during the day and don't bother to put on something to go to the men's or ladies, I suppose. You still have a bad situation in there. Like you said, with the men's, there's the additional, urinal crossfire situation that you could have.
Yeah, the sock is absolutely never a safe choice in the restroom. You might as well be strapping a couple of sponges onto your feet at this point. You're just in there mopping up all the whiz, all the feces, whatever's on that floor, it's coming back with you to the desk.
Right. So flops, better than socks.
Absolutely.
And, better than bare feet, but nothing's worse than socks.
I would say that's true.
All right. So let's move on to sort of our main topic that I wanted to cover, which was talking in the restroom. Can you give us the rundown on your basic rules?
Sure. Now, let me start specifically in the workplace on this topic, because there's very different rules for workplace behavior when it comes to talking versus, say, at a Fish concert. Let's go. Okay, so first, you walk into the restroom by yourself. You pull up to a urinal, starting to do your business. Somebody else walks in, strikes up a conversation. Do you talk to them?
I mean, I would say no. It sort of depends what they're talking about.
Sure.
Are they talking about restroom related matters?
That might be okay. Generally, though, what I do in that situation is I give the one-word answers, kind of make it clear I'm not here to have a full chat at the urinal. Now, the other option is you and I walk into the men's room together mid-conversation. We're just, playing a cool game. Something happens. We're still talking about it. Into the restroom. Conversation continues at the urinal. I think that's okay.
You think it's okay to just go straight ahead?
I think it's okay. Now, here's some caveats. I mean, there's going to be no eye contact at any point during that conversation. Even if I have something really important I want to, make that point, you're not going to see me.
Okay.
It's extra critical that if there's no stall blinder, that the head never turns from straight ahead. I don't want to give the impression that I'm looking over at the junk. So it's eyes forward at all times. Now, you and I walk into the restroom. We're mid-conversation. However, one of us heads to the urinal, the other's going into the stall. At the point that the one goes into the stall and that door shuts, that conversation has terminated.
Right.
There's no more conversation.
There can be no conversation over the stall barrier.
That stall barrier has been established. We're not going to continue talking.
And so, by extension, in the ladies' room, there'd be no conversation within any of the stalls. So there's actually like a gendered advantage here. In the men's room, you can continue a conversation if you're both using the urinal.
That's where I would love to consult some ladies on this one, because I feel without that urinal ability to continue the conversation, they might very well continue a conversation stall to stall, which is a complete breach of protocol in the men's room.
But you feel like in the ladies' room, this could possibly be acceptable.
It could be, but then it gets very questionable when there's some noises coming out of one of those stalls and you're mid-conversation, and then who's next to you, and it's going to get awkward.
Yeah. I'll make a note for that when we have one of our female correspondents on a later episode. I do have some people lined up to come on and give us that sort of extra perspective. Yes.
That'd be awesome. Now, I do want to bring up one quick caveat to the stall barrier conversation that we just had. If I enter the men's room and I am talking to a skip level or higher manager, so not my direct manager, we're talking skip level or higher in my management chain. I don't care if it's an executive outside of my management chain. In my management chain, we have a conversation on the way in. One of us enters the stall. If that manager decides to continue the conversation, you are required by law to continue that conversation. You got to power right through all the noises. You got to do anything that happens, but you got to keep that conversation going because it will directly affect your career.
Right. That's interesting to me, though, that you specifically limit it to your management chain. That, the CEO, you would need to continue a conversation with the CEO or president of the company, obviously. Yes. But, if you're an engineer and you're going in with the VP of marketing, you wouldn't necessarily keep talking to that VP of marketing.
It'd be a little awkward, but I would go 100% silent.
Okay. That's interesting. It's interesting that you have to do that sort of workplace calculus, but I mean, everything in a big company is political.
Absolutely.
Actually, in any size group of people is political. So I guess that doesn't make much difference. So is there anything else that would override the stall barrier?
Obviously an emergency situation. I mean, without question, if you get in there, business has begun, you're not pre-business and you've realized we've got a toilet paper situation. There's nothing in there. You've got nothing to wipe with. You're now in an emergency situation. If you can call out for some minor help, trying not to give away your identity, that is ideal. Just a little help here. Could use some TP.
Do you disguise your voice? Do you put your hand in front of it and try to do a voice like this?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. You go for the Bane voice.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of another good circumstance, but emergencies, if there's a plumbing issue and, like water is spilling to the floor and you are getting doused and you are at risk of injury, maybe you scream for help.
Yeah, I would say obviously risk of injury
Mm-hmm.
overrides anything.
Sure.
But short of that, if there is a situation, overflow situation, that's an interesting point because do you even acknowledge?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wasn't planning to get to this topic
Hey,
today, but
sometimes things just
sometimes
happen.
things happen. Yeah.
If there's a facilities issue that is going to impact others that use the restroom, should it be a clog, an overflow, or lack of flush? Ideally, you have a way to anonymously report such an incident to facilities,
Okay.
or at least keep it quiet so it doesn't become your reputation as the guy who consistently clogs the toilets. But I'm a big fan of being socially responsible. I don't want to leave the bathroom in a state that I wouldn't want to use it in. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's also much more of a problem if you're in a smaller office
Mm-hmm.
where you have kind of a single restroom
Absolutely.
or, one or two restrooms that
Mm-hmm.
are standalones.
Oh, yeah.
On a shared thing, it's a little weird. Yeah, you probably want to try and do an anonymous
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
reporting. So, what I want to talk about now is sort of the situation where you come in, you're speaking, one of you goes to the stall,
Mm-hmm.
you cease conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you resume when you get to the sinks, if you both get to the sinks near the same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely if you were at the urinals and the conversation stopped at that time, absolutely great to resume once you've reached the sinks. It's definitely a little more awkward that if you're at the sink, when I come out of the stall, you've just seen me come out of the stall, then we're talking and
So
we're
I'm
kind of,
aware of your exit.
you're aware that the restroom had this kind of odor to it. And you're like, that's the guy that did that. And now we're talking about baseball. I don't know. That could be a little awkward.
Yeah, I suppose it could be, but is there any is there a waiting period allowed at the sink? So this is something I was thinking about. If you go to a urinal, not everyone finishes their business
Sure.
at the same rate. And I go over, I'm washing my hands, my compatriot still at the urinal. We may or may not be continuing the conversation, but
Mhm.
how long do I wait before it gets awkward that I'm just sitting there, before I become the men's room attendant? Basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. If you're not serving mints or towels, you pretty much got to get out of there right at the point you've dried your hands.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really acceptable to just stand there hanging out. I mean, you can do the thing where you're fake looking in the mirror, adjusting your hair, kind of, but at some point it's just awkward that the other person knows, why is this guy waiting in here for me?
Right. So then you have to exit, but then you're kind of posted up outside
Mm-hmm.
the men's if you're still waiting to resume that conversation.
Yeah, that conversation's important. I mean, you can't always go outside, do a shoe tie. I mean, there's some other options you can
There you
go
go.
with. But I think kind of the key is you don't want to be creeping out in the bathroom itself.
Okay. So you want to make sure that you have some, I don't know, distance from the situation
Absolutely.
that could allow you to. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking there's like a plausible deniability factor here that you're trying to do once you've exited, right? Like you said, you're trying to tie your shoe. You're trying to, look engaged in something right outside of that restroom. Is this because you don't want someone to know you're waiting for someone in the restroom?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
like, how would it look that you're waiting there at the mirror, other person's finishing their business, third party comes into the restroom, sees you just kind of standing there with like no clear intention of you're done washing your hands, you're not actively headed towards one of the toilets, but so that person's now wondering, does Justin always hang out in the men's room for a little extra time? Do I need to worry about this?
Well, see, I like the idea of just bringing mints with you and becoming an attendant. Is this an acceptable course of action? You said you're not giving out a towel or mints. I'm not going to carry around like a whole box of rags, a whole like little, service situation, but I could have a tin of Altoids in my pocket.
I think that would be spectacular if you were standing there just, after washing your hands, somebody else comes up and you just have the Altoids ready or mint, sir, and have a little tip jar there as well, just in case.
Ooh.
But yeah, that'd be
A
great.
little tip jar, like a little thing just attached to your Altoids tin permanently. You make like a bespoke tip. Like I'm thinking of just like the lowest rent thing possible here, where you just make like a little cube out of paper and you hang it off one side of the Altoids tin with
little
with a little bit
origami
of
tip jar.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Fantastic
it's gotta
idea.
be, I think it has to look sort of bolted on because otherwise you're way too prepared.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of being just slightly prepared to accept tips.
That's a great idea. I like it. That's the kind of thing that'll show up in a review. You know, your manager's like, this guy puts in that extra effort. He's in the restroom. He's trying to improve morale. He wants people with fresh breath, that kind of thing.
Now, can you do the same thing in a non-workplace situation? You go to a restaurant that does not have an attendant. It's not like a 4-star, 5-star fancy place. Can you just post up in that restroom and become an attendant? Is that illegal?
That is a spectacular idea, actually. You know, instead of outside busking with your guitar, singing away, just putting all that effort into it, you just sneak into a restroom with a box of Altoids and a tip jar. I think you might be able to pull this off.
Yeah, I feel like this could actually be like a really interesting opportunity to make some side income. Just, go out there. It's a new gig economy service, actually, where the restaurant owners can just go on their app and say that they want restroom attendants for the evening.
It's kind of like a ride share for restrooms.
Yeah, exactly. Like you need to bring your own supplies, and then everyone who summons you will review you based on how complete your supplies are.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think this is an idea. I think we'll move forward with this.
Yeah, the Uber for restroom attendants. So what about in non-workplace situations? So you talked about the kind of skip level exception.
Sure.
Are there exceptions that are not like safety and completion related that work outside of the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the workplace, it's a different ball game.
Okay.
I mean, literally, you could be at a ball game and you're just next to a stranger, and it might be one of those super awkward troughs.
Oh, yeah, the trough. Yeah.
There's a whole separate conversation we can have about spacing at the trough. However, we're not probably going into that one today.
No, I think we're leaving urinal spacing. Urinal spacing's been sort of a well-covered topic.
Yeah, there's a solid algorithm on that one.
But I feel like there is a lot to talk about in terms of the trough type of situation. But let's skip that.
Yep.
But there, I guess what you're saying is, it would be okay to like talk about the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're in a situation with people you don't usually know or a buddy, but it's at the ball game. You're allowed to have conversations. You can make eye contact as much as you want. Just try not to look down. That gets awkward. I mean, even in the stall barrier doesn't so much apply at like a concert or at a ball game. Generally, I frown upon it, but if somebody has to say something, you can respond back.
All right. So that's good to know.
However, let me clarify. The barefoot situation is never okay.
Right. I think, barefoot, except maybe in your own home. I think barefoot's kind of right out.
I agree.
What about a friend's home? Is barefoot okay there? Or, I mean, you're probably not. Well, no, you might be barefoot if you're wearing flip-flops and they're a family that doesn't wear shoes in the house.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at all the risk factors there. I mean, you've got, does the family have kids? Kids are a little more sloppy around the toilet. There might be some splash on the floor.
Right.
Pet issues. You could step in some pet, output that you're not expecting. I'm generally a fan of keeping something on my feet unless I'm in the comfort of my own home.
Okay. So, anything else you want to say about talking at the in the restroom? I think you've covered most of it.
No, I think that's primarily the rules that I live my life by. Obviously, there's kind of just the try to keep your conversations at a minimal volume. Also at the urinal, nobody likes that loud guy who's just screaming away while you're trying to enjoy your quick game of like Bejeweled while you're on the can. So. And also, please don't take a call.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that might come up.
Oh, yeah. Calling. So don't take a phone call that comes in. What about if you're on a conference call and you are not one of the most active participants on this conference call?
Sure.
You're mainly like a passive listener and you kind of mute your microphone.
Yep.
Can you stay on the call and enter the stall?
Yes. Once again, so a couple of rules apply. So let's say this is in the workplace. If I'm on the conference call, first question is, do I have a headphone? Am I wearing a AirPod? Am I, is it quiet to me? Only I can hear it. As long as I'm confident in my ability to mute that call, so nobody's hearing flush noises during the conference call.
Right.
I think that's okay if you have to. I mean, we're
Okay.
talking emergency situations.
So you want to be on a Bluetooth, an
Right.
AirPod,
Yeah.
at least like a wired
Right.
headphone.
Now, if you're the guy who walks in there and is actively talking on the call while you're in the restroom, I'm amazed by these people, but I do run into it every now and again. I kind of generally try to troll them a bit by firing off a couple extra courtesy flushes or something like that, just to make sure they make it on the call.
Okay, yeah, you want to make sure
Yeah.
that
Let
whoever
the guy
they're
know.
talking to is aware.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on this call and you haven't had to say anything for the last 5 minutes,
Sure.
but someone asks you a direct question,
Oh, yeah. That's the worst.
kind of the worst situation you could possibly have.
It really is. You really have to do your best to just kind of jump off the mute, quickly say, "Oh yeah, and then like zap right back on the mute."
Right, before the Peter in
Yeah.
the next stall over can courtesy
Gives
flush
you the courtesy flush just to troll you. Yep.
Now I have one more urinal specific
Sure.
question, which is you mentioned, you have two people, you're having conversation, you both pull up to the urinal, that's okay. Now, what if it's a 3 urinal bank?
Mm-hmm.
Normal urinal etiquette would dictate that you go to the far sides of
Correct.
that, right? You still do that, I assume.
Yes, you do.
What if someone jumps in mid?
So somebody goes mid.
Yeah.
While you and your friend are on
Or
left and right.
speaking on left
Yes,
and right.
Speaking on left and right. So now you're contemplating doing a cross-person conversation
Right.
at the urinals. Again, I kind of default back to some of the, like, who am I speaking to? If I'm speaking to you, I might start giving you the one-word answers, kind of trying to give you the indicator that let's wind this down until
Right,
we're out of
let's-
here, or at the sinks at least.
Yeah.
Again, if it's a skip level and that he's actively engaging me in questioning, I'm not letting up. I am firing right back. He's
Now-
getting a full response.
What if you're talking to one of your peers in the office and it's the skip level manager or higher who pulls up in the middle?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
You got to do your best to really wrap that conversation
Okay.
up. I mean, now if that skip level jumps into the convo, the skip level rules apply and we all
Right.
start chatting. Everybody's involved at this point. Conference in the bathroom.
Right. Big
Now-
conference call.
But if
Or
that skip
conference.
level, if they stay quiet, let's wrap this thing up as fast as possible.
All right.
And you will notice this whole time I've been referring to the skip level.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of respect, say, for the direct manager in these circumstances. I think more of them as a peer. You have to weigh that carefully because you want them to feel like they're cool and they're involved in the same kind of banter that you are.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want to offend them.
So that's what I was going to ask, because
Yeah.
you've been a manager.
Sure.
Would you have been offended if your direct report kind of cut off that conversation?
If I had instigated the
Yeah.
conversation and the direct report
Well, I
went
guess
quiet
you
on me.
wouldn't instigate. That's sort of
Well, as
one
a
of the
well-trained bathroom etiquette individual, I
Right.
probably would not instigate. However, for fun, I might instigate the conversation just to kind of test the individual to see where they draw the line.
okay. So you're going to kind of take this into consideration,
Mhm.
and on their next performance review,
I might call that out. Yeah.
This is going to be
Yeah.
front of mind for you.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't phrase it as such in the performance feedback, but there might be some indicators like, strong communication skills, willing to step up, willing to, carry a conversation, that kind of thing. All good skills.
All right. Just so you know, like every direct report you have in the future, I'm sending them this. I'm going to find out who they are,
Fantastic.
and they will know how to behave correctly, for
Absolutely.
one, and two, how to impress their manager.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
then
love it.
you'll need to take your manager and do a test with them, right? Make
Yeah.
sure that they abide by the skip level rule.
That's a great idea. Yeah. So currently my manager is in a different state. So we don't get a lot of FaceTime, especially in the restrooms.
Right.
But we do get together every now and then. So I'll make sure make sure some of those circumstances happen.
Nice. All right. So I think that covers talking in the restroom. Now it's time for our do's and don'ts segment, where we adjudicate your restroom encounters and answer your burning questions. Obviously, this is the first episode, so we didn't have listener questions, but I put a call out on my personal Facebook and Twitter pages. And on Facebook, I got some interesting responses, so I'm going to go through a couple of them here. Scott wrote in with the following anecdote. There's a guy at my work that makes all sorts of odd sounds from all his orifices when he's in the bathroom stall. So much so that I know it's him every time. He doesn't talk or whistle or take phone calls, at least, but he's the most noisy person in the bathroom that I've ever heard. So what do you do in this situation? Is there reaction needed? I mean, at least we've gone over he's not talking, he's not taking phone calls,
Right.
To tie it into the previous subject. But
Right. Well, the fact that Scott knows who this individual is, that means that individual has failed at several steps leading up to this.
okay.
I mean, everybody makes noises in the bathroom, especially in the stall. But the difference between the high-performing individual and this individual is that the high-performing individual will be in the restroom making noises when nobody knows who is in the stall.
Right.
You and I walk into the bathroom together. You're at the urinal. I go to the stall. I know I'm going to make some noises. I've got the rumbles going on. I might wait it out. You know,
Or
I
you're going
might.
to try to delay.
Yeah, there's going to be a delay.
You're going to suss it out. You're going to
As
listen
best I can.
for my exit.
Correct. I'm going to listen for your exit. Now, if I hear you exit, I hear somebody else come in. Hey, I'm in the clear. Nobody knows who I am unless I've done that incredibly stupid thing I've seen people do where they hang their badge off their pocket under the stall. So everybody's reading your name as the flatulence is flying out.
That is not good.
No.
That is very bad. I mean, it's bad enough that you're basically forced to expose your shoes. And if you wear unique shoes, they might be
Yes.
visible.
This brings us back quickly to the Fivefinger conversation.
Right.
Wearing uniquely identifiable footwear is a tremendously bad idea for this exact reason.
Right.
If you're the guy who wears the yellow Nikes every day and you're having flaming diarrhea, I know it's you.
Yes.
Hey, Justin's really sick. Let's call the 911.
Yeah. So you want to be the guy who's just wearing Oxfords or tennis shoes, like something that a bunch of other people in the office are going to be wearing as well.
Again, no reason to distinguish yourself in the workplace for these reasons.
So from the premise that this guy has failed, though, is there anything that Scott should do about this?
There really isn't much Scott can do in this situation. Okay. I mean, at this point, it's kind of his duty to bring it up to other peers. Like, hey, did you notice that, let's call this individual Mike. Hey, did you notice that Mike is like always just tearing it up in the bathroom? Like, it's now his job to spread the workplace rumor about Mike and kind of confirm it, that it's not just his opinion.
That everyone thinks this about, quote unquote, Mike.
Right. Because Mike has failed at this point. He's made it public that he's just tearing the place up. So
you just want to shame him?
It's not to his face. It's the passive aggressive workplace etiquette where we just have a little side conversation about it. You notice that Mike's always, destroying the bathroom kind of thing.
That he makes odd sounds. Mm-hmm. I did like the specifics of they are odd sounds.
Yeah, that's a good question. What kind of sounds are coming out of there?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that. Maybe I should have.
Because there is
we can for the future. Yeah,
there is a whole nother ball of wax we could talk about, which is, there's noises that come out of a stall that are just going to happen to everybody, within reason. But there are some people that do some vocalizations out of the stall, like where they're adding kind of the color commentary to it, kind of not talking to it, but sort of kind of grunting and
more, more of the surrounding kind of talking.
Yes.
Talking around it.
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't say talking. Yeah.
Yeah, but the people there, there's more of a grunt and kind of, you're like, wow, I don't want to know what's going on in there kind of thing.
Yeah. So try not to do that. Passive aggressively shame them around the office. Okay.
And also,
that's a very Pacific Northwest sort of approach
absolutely.
as well.
It's a Seattle freeze technique I've learned living here. The other thing is, now that Scott in this case knows that, let's say Mike is the guy who tears it up, he might actively want to steer clear of the situation.
Right.
Like if he's uncomfortable with it, as many would be, you might see Mike headed in. Scott just chooses to hold that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, come back in a little bit.
Yeah, do a delay. Yeah. If you've got another restroom available, divert. If you're on a multi-floor building, go upstairs. That's always a good technique.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it should be known that there's a lot of people that kind of maintain this list of people that they work with and their habits. So that's kind of why I've been stressing staying anonymous in the bathroom, things like that.
That's not just you?
No, I think there are people. I've had these conversations where they're like, oh yeah, that guy's always blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so just be aware that even though you might not be thinking about it, your bowel habits might become public knowledge.
Okay. It's a good note. We'll keep that going forward. We have another sort of communication-related question that also came in. This one came from Lindy, and she asked, how do you politely remind someone to wash their hands? I see a few repeat offenders come out of the stall and immediately leave. Why?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, folks, it's the workplace. I don't care if you don't wash your hands at home, even though you're a dirty individual. When you're in the workplace, even if you don't want to, you step up to that sink. I want to see that soap fire into your hands. I want to see a good lather. I want to see you doing a surgeon scrub up to the wrist. And I want to see a good rinse and dry.
You need a full 2-minute hand washing session, right? It's like brushing your teeth.
Totally, within reason. I mean, and it, again, yeah, you might not do that at home, but we're all sharing the workplace. You're grabbing doorknobs, you're grabbing the fridge handle. I've got to grab that fridge handle. If I see you come out of the stall and beeline it right out of there, you're clearly going on my list of individuals that I have a problem with.
Okay. And you will avoid that individual. Is this another place to deploy passive aggression?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, we're in the workplace. You have to work with these people. So doing a frontal assault, like full, I'm going to just call you on it kind of thing is awkward because then we got to work tomorrow together. So generally what I do is I see somebody coming out and they're starting to look like they might go for the, exit rather than the sink. I'm clearing my throat. I'm making some kind of under the breath comments like, maybe lather my hands together in a fashion.
I was just thinking about is there a situation for actually like making a big point out of this where I see that person kind of going, or I know their schedule, or I see that they're, going to the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
I try and I cut them off.
Ooh.
I get in there. I go straight to the sink. I start hand washing, and I keep hand washing until they're done.
Yeah.
I've been washing the entire time.
A good 5-minute wash.
Right.
Yeah.
5-minute wash. And I just stare at the person as they're exiting the stall.
Right.
Is this too aggressive?
No.
No?
I would absolutely I don't know about the full 5-minute wash and chase the person into the restroom, but if I'm in there, somebody's coming out, I would normally be done with the wash. I might extend that wash, just a few, a little extra strokes, and definitely try to make eye contact with them. This is the place where you want to make eye contact.
This is important to deploy.
We're not making eye contact over at the urinals when the junk is out.
Right. Or like going into and out of the stall.
Correct.
If someone's operating a door, you're not making eye contact with them at that point.
But at the sink, that's a great place, because if I've made eye contact with you and you still power right out of the restroom, we've all learned something that day.
We all know that you are willing to know that I know.
Exactly.
Right.
And you're comfortable with that, knowing that you're just a dirty person.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it for our questions for this week. If you have an anecdote you'd like to share or question you'd like to ask, you can reach us through our website or tweet with the hashtag Deucedrop. That's DEUCEDROP. That's it for this week's episode of the Commode Code. Show notes for this week are at commode.show/1. The show is on Twitter and Facebook as @Commode Code. You can find me on Twitter at BangFalse, BANGFALSE. Peter's on Twitter at TheMadCrapper. Please help us out by reviewing us on Apple Podcasts or giving us a star in Overcast. If any of your friends might like this sort of thing, please recommend the show to them. Our music is by Audionautics.com. Thanks to my brother-in-law, Nick Mugby, for the name of our Deuces and Don'ts segment, and thanks to you for listening. We'll be back again next fortnight.
Thanks, everybody.